computer. That sounds good. Hey, everybody. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Hey, doing well.
Good. Yeah, we got quite a few people with us here tonight, which is good, and hopefully we got some more dropping in. This is just a drop-in social talking thing, but let's just go ahead and see who we have. So we got Dwayne up there. How you doing, Dwayne? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Dwayne. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I'm a small YouTube content creator of Blackboard Gaming, and I tried to chronicle introducing my wife to board games since this pandemic started.
Oh, I don't know about introducing games to partners. That could be tough, right? If the partner
it is. You definitely have to be aware of her likes and dislikes and what themes she, can get into and some things that she's not going to get into. So I always have to keep that in mind.
Right. Very good. Well, thank you, Dwayne. Now we've got Amanda Panda over there. How you doing, Amanda?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And where are you from?
I'm from LA, and basically I play games online on Twitch sometimes, and I moderate for Twitch, and I do Instagram content creations.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you I'm glad you're here tonight. Down there, we have a regular. He's been with me every single show. Thank you so much. That is Chris Yee. Hello, Chris.
How's it going? I just like the sound of my own voice. It's all right.
You have that voice, Chris. You got the voice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'm from a podcast called Meeple Overboard. We have a weekly podcast, about half an hour each episode, which people tend to like. We also have a YouTube channel that we've been starting to do a few more live streams. We're figuring out some of the technology there. And then I also have a second podcast called the CNC Board Game Factory, where my friend Cam and I are actually trying to design board games and see if, two numbskulls can actually make something good.
Sounds fantastic. All right, and Estefania over there. Hello, Estefania.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
So my name is Estefania Rodriguez. I'm a board game designer. I'm about to finish my first game called Popcats Fighter. And then if you want to find me online, you can find me on Twitter at Estefania R, the letter R88.
All right, and last but certainly not least, with the muzzle over there, wearing the mask, because he's in Meepleville. That is Grant, so I don't know if he could talk real quick, and no, don't have the audio on. Okay, well, that's who that masked man is over there.
He's just there for the pretty face. We get it.
Yeah. Something for us to look at.
Yes, he is. So, so Dwayne, I'm interested. How did you get into gaming?
Okay, so I had a son who passed away in 2014. He had sickle cell.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Sorry.
Before he passed, like me and him were really heavily into video games. We played a lot of video games together. And so my wife, she didn't do video games at all. She even tried. But when he passed away, I was looking for something that, me and my wife could participate in together. And so I started looking at board games. Before then, I did play the Naruto CCG and all that, and I was heavily into that. So I started looking for board games that my wife might like. And she's a teacher. So the first game I got her was Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
Oh.
And it's a great game, but not a great first game. So I think the next game I tried with her was Forbidden Island, and she really enjoyed Forbidden Island. Now
was it the non-competitive aspect, you think, that you worked together? Is that what she enjoyed, you think?
I think that's what started it, because we're working together. She's not very combative when it comes to games. Like, we play spades. She does not like playing spades with me.
With you, or doesn't like playing spades?
Yeah. So, because she says I'm very competitive, which I'm not. I just don't like to lose. But
those are two different things, Dwayne. Those are two different things.
Kinda, yeah. So we started checking Forbidden Island. She really liked. And like when I got into the board game hobby, I fell hard. Like I just came in running. And like right now, my collection is about 235 right now.
Oh, nice.
You know, yeah. So, but I'm also trying to make sure, like, hey, here's a game we could try. Here's a game we could try. And sometimes it's a hitter and sometimes it's a miss. You know, so that's how I got into board games. And that was in 2014.
Oh, okay. So it's been a while.
Yes. And so I say like 2019, I went to Origins and my wife went with me, and that was the best trip I've had. But I noticed that there wasn't a lot of people of color there. Mm-hmm. So when I first, I said, well, I want to start some kind of YouTube channel that let people know, hey, there are people of color that love board games. And so the first thing I called it was Gaming While Black. And, I didn't post any videos until the pandemic happened. Mm-hmm. And then like when I started posting the videos, I was trying to find what niche will I have, because there's so many great YouTube content creators. Mm-hmm. And so I started calling it My Wife as a Board Gamer, kind of a play on my life as a board gamer. Uh-huh. So I kind of roped her into it. But I also realized that I'm the board game enthusiast, and she's just along for the ride. So I say, well, I want to change the name. I talked to Dan King, the board game geek, and he was like, find your specific brand. And I started.
I want to just, it's a Game Boy Geek, right?
Oh, Game Boy Geek, yeah.
Board Game, yeah.
Sorry. And so I started like really researching names, something that was catchy, because while I like Gaming While Black, it didn't sound inclusive. I wanted something that sounded more, the board game is open for everybody. And so like my wife's a teacher, and one of my son's best friends suggested, why don't you call it Blackboard Gaming? And the light just went on, like, that's it. So I started calling it that, and she's on board now. Like I said, she's a teacher. So, and it's just a play on words. Right. And so far I'm enjoying doing it. It's a lot of work. It definitely is work, but I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And the thing about it, because Ruel's not here, and I call him the James Brown of gaming, because he does talk about work, man. I just don't know how he does it. Yeah. And I would say, I don't know if it's a real close second, but I know second is Chris, because Chris does a lot of work too, and I just don't know how you guys do it.
I wouldn't call myself too close to Ruel. I appreciate it though.
I know Ruel's ridiculous. He's just
yeah. And on top of all of the video and the Twitch streaming and Facebook live streams, he writes as well. So he's writing for I think he still does a monthly thing or something, a column for I Slay the Dragon, and for he podcasts with the Five By on occasion. So he's everywhere. That guy is impressive.
For sure.
Yeah, and how about you, Chris? How did you start in gaming?
So right about when Wendy and I were getting married. So Wendy and I co-host the podcast together, and right about when we were getting married, my brother was living currently at that time was living up in Alaska. He drove down to hang out with us, spend some time as a family before the wedding and everything. And so he introduced us to Dominion, the deck building game, and he also introduced us to Settlers of Catan and to Munchkin. But Dominion was the one that caught hold of us. We played Catan, and it was one of those, we were kind of figuring it out, and, oh, you have 10 points already. I have 2 villages, so clearly I'm not doing this right, and so it just never spoke to us quite the right way, and we've since found out we just don't like trading. That's not our mechanism. Munchkin, it's a cute game.
Yeah,
that's the nicest, from my personal opinion. But Dominion's the one that just latched onto us. The idea that you could play there's 10 stacks of cards. You build up a deck as you play it. It's not like Magic the Gathering, this is my more expensive deck, so it's going to win, and so just something about that perfect storm of things made me say, I want to play this nonstop. And so when did I both got hooked into Dominion, and then kind of from there into other games. Once we bought every Dominion expansion that was out in like 2013, 14 or so, we spent a few years buying those, and then we said, well, I guess there's probably other games too, right?
Probably. Yeah.
Maybe.
But let me ask you something about that, Chris, real quick, because I don't know. Dominion is okay with me. I'm not a big deck builder guy. But when you said you bought all of the different expansions, is there a lot of like variety? Like, do they make them that different?
I think so. I don't know if anyone else has, if anyone else is big into Dominion like I am. No. But... Okay. Because the base box has like 30 different cards. You always pick a set of 10. And so you get a good amount of variety, right? You have your set of 10 cards that you can interact for different, different triggers and effects and stuff. And you mix up 2 or 3 of those. You change up what happens. But then in the later boxes, they start having fun effects where, something will trigger as soon as you buy this card. And so now you're thinking, well, I want these 2 different cards, but this one will give me something now, dangling the carrot in front of you. And so every different expansion box has like a different kind of a theme to it, like not just the title. This one's the farmlands expansion, but like everything feels like this one wants you to have lots of different types of cards in your deck and rewards you for that. This one wants you to try and like thin out your deck as much as possible. So there's lots of ways to control what comes in and out of it. And so I would say for someone who is steeped into the game, people will say, "Oh, this is the best expansion. This is clearly it sparks that like strong-willed opinions and stuff about it because they are pretty distinct." But if you played it and said, "This game's okay," I don't think that you're gonna be that passionate about how different each expansion box is.
Okay.
I think my issue with Dominion is that I always want the action cards and I want to combo those action cards, but that's not the point. The point is to use your action cards to get money to get the points, right? To buy the points. And like playing just the base game, it's like, oh my God, it's like a struggle. It's like, I know I should buy the money cards, but I want the action cards, And then like playing with some of the expansions helps alleviate that. But at the same time, it's still that struggle. I think my favorite was Adventures. That one was fun for me because you can put a card aside and then get it later, and it gains points, or it just helps thin out your deck. But base Dominion was like not my favorite at all.
It's funny because I remember playing Dominion back in like 2013, 14, and that's really the last time I played it with a group of friends that we used to play it quite often actually. But all I remember in my head was one of our friends always wanting to play, I think it was the Witch.
Oh gosh.
And they were like, the Witch is mine. And they were like, no, stop picking the Witch.
Because it gives everyone else the curse cards, the gunk cards that sit on the deck. And
she only played the just to mess everybody up. She did not care about winning at all. So, but it was fun. But like, it was just a thing where like, that's all I remember from it. Like, that's my memory, like the Witch. And I'm like,
That would make it less fun. I agree with you.
But
well, I haven't played Dominion. I have yet to play Dominion yet. I haven't played it yet. That's one of my latest games.
I think it's a classic, but also it is 12 years old. So, in board game terms, that's ancient history,
Yeah. Was it one of the first or deck builders or no? I mean, I don't really know, but was it?
It was.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think there might have been like one other one, but that one's the main one that started the whole deck building mechanic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was extremely popular. Yeah, it really.
Kind of like Seven Wonders was. People say, "Oh, there are card drafting games before Seven Wonders," but Seven Wonders is the one that everyone was copying from that point forward.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's kind of our introduction into gaming and what got us hooked. So yeah, it's been almost a decade, I think, since we got introduced to it.
Oh, nice. And how about you, Amanda?
It's funny because I'm an only child, but I always had a board game. So I started with like Mahjong, right? And then, I always had a deck of cards somewhere. And then, like for Christmas, I always wanted a board game. I got like Candyland. I got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, it just like, even if I played by myself, I always hoped that, someone would come over and play with me, or my babysitter would play with me. So from small child, I always had a board game in the house. And then probably Will Wheaton, the tabletop series.
Yeah.
That one really got me into the modern board game.
Man, that was fantastic. That whole thing. They brought so many people into gaming, because into Meepleville we had people all the time. I even, when I first opened, I actually had a Will Wheaton section. So people, so people who watch the show could come in and know a game that was highlighted on the show. It's just so bad that that's not around anymore.
Yeah, I really wish that it would have like taken off in a different way, or he would have done it himself, just to keep the whole momentum. But I think that like having those like Target exclusive board games really keeps, modern board gaming in the general public's eye, because they're seeing these games that are slimmed down so that, a casual player, someone who hasn't played modern board games, can pick it up and just start playing. So I think that is wonderful. But my first purchase was Caverna, which is a very big box and heavy. It's a bit heavier game for my first modern board game. But, I went into one of my local gaming stores, and I was very uncomfortable because I was the only girl. And all the guys were like, it was war games and miniatures out there, and everyone turned and looked at me, and I was like, I'm gonna go look at the games. And so that was not the best thing, but I got a game. I took home, I started introducing all my friends, so I'm the instigator. I'm the one who's like, oh, let's play this game, you'll like it, and then they become a board gamer. Like my coworker back then, like I got her so into board games when Game House Cafe in Glendale opened up 5 years ago. Me and her would go every Saturday, and then we got to know like Terry and Robert, the owners, very, very well, because we went every single Saturday. And board game cafes are just wonderful for introducing people to the hobby. Like Meepleville, because it's like, some people wander in just for coffee, or just for the homemade pie, or for food, right? But then they see these board games, and you see families there. You see, everywhere. We, in the beginning, it was just us, my group, as the only females. But as more people saw that there's girls, and it's a very welcoming environment. Like people will go there just with their families, with little kids. They had Candyland and all the original games. But then, you have families, and then the parents might just go by themselves, and then you see meetups started happening, and it was wonderful. I feel so welcome in board game cafes, which is so much better than actual gaming stores, because those things are still a little bit one colored or one tone. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's mostly male, or mostly Caucasian.
True. And I would dare say, because Grant just popped in, he's not really talking, but he could probably back up what I'm saying. But no, Amanda just made the point about how board game cafes are really welcoming as opposed to game stores. And in their defense, I would say, because a game store, the entertainment or the experience or the customer service, the people getting together, isn't their number one product.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
I agree. I mean, so in their defense, maybe that's why it's maybe not as welcoming, because for us, and I tell people, I'm fully open and transparent, you can get a game cheaper online. You can get a game cheaper at other stores in town. You can buy better food literally right across the parking lot. But when you come into Meepleville, we provide an experience. That's what I feel you can get from us that you can't get from other places, because that's our number one product, is the experience. Is welcoming all types of people, all colors, all genders, all sexual orientations, whatever it is. We don't care. It's like, we just want people getting together, playing games. Period. End of story. That's it.
No, I
that
totally
is your first product. But your second best product are the bacon cheese tots.
Oh, there we go.
The clothes first, though.
Man, I gotta go try those.
Yeah,
I miss those,
good.
Tim. I miss those.
yes, I know. Yeah, Chris was a regular. Him and his wife, date night, right? Every Friday.
Every Friday, yeah.
And they would come together, but you would come by yourself on Wednesdays because you had your group on Wednesdays to play. But yeah, he was regular. And since the pandemic, Chris is just one of those people who got nothing against him or whatever. He's just being a little bit more diligent, staying at home, doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we missed having you there as well, Chris. So hopefully you'll be back. And how about you, Estefania? How'd you get started?
It's been kind of something that's been in my life since the beginning. Since I was very young, I played board games and video games alike. I think the board game stuff, when I was about like 8 or 9, I used to live in Argentina, and my grandpa lived in Miami. And when he came to visit me for the first time when I was little, he brought like American board games. And I was like, those were like my real first board games. And it was the typical, it was Monopoly, Life, Clue, and Operation. And those are kind of the ones that I used to play over and over and over again, because those are the ones that are like, oh my God, it's like United States, like it was just such a big thing for me. And then again, through my teen years, I used to play a lot of cards, like kind of like poker, but there's like a couple Latin versions of similar games like that, like canasta, you might have heard, and other stuff.
Loteria?
Yeah, it's all that kind of stuff. Like I used to play those games. Those card games, and then I played video games still, and then in my 20s I got into like more complicated games, or like maybe they had a nice art and stuff like that, like Dominion. I played Love Letter, I played Munchkin, bunch of other stuff like that, and I think in the past 5 years is when I really started to focus more on like seeing the community around it, not just me picking up a game or like my friend telling me like, oh, this game is cool. Like really getting to know the people, getting to know what everyone's playing or what everyone's doing, and looking at content and stuff like that. So that's probably the last 5 years for me, really.
Okay. It's funny because so Dwayne said Sherlock Holmes consulting detective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Amanda was Caverna. Chris was Dominion. And what was kind of, I don't know if you said like a first one sort of into the Euro world. Do you remember, Estefania?
No, I don't remember one specific really, because it's always friends of mine that used to buy them. Okay. And then I would play them. So I guess I'm definitely much more of a casual gamer in that sense. There's a lot of terms and stuff like that still escape me, which I was going to bring up. Like I was going to have a question, like what is the definition that you guys say that it's modern board gaming? Like what does that mean when you say modern compared to just board gaming? Like aren't they all board games? Well, does that make sense?
No, that's a fantastic question. I think, and to me, I mean, I'll tell you my story, and I know Grant relates to this too. When people come into Meepleville, and at first I used to think it was such a stupid thing to say, but then I realized I was that person. Hey, what kind of games do you like? What do you play? Oh, I play them all. And I'm like, really? You play them all? You know them all? But I was literally that person when I think about it, because I was a hardcore gamer my whole life. Mm-hmm. But when I say that, it was only the games that I knew. And I literally thought I knew every game in the world, because Monopoly, Risk, Battleship.
Battleship, yeah.
All those. And to tell you how I literally thought that, I believed that, and and I even played cribbage, chess, backgammon, hearts, all the games that weren't, sort of these type of games. Mm-hmm. And just to tell you how much I believe that, in my early 20s, because growing up, I just turned 57, so I'm a lot older than a lot of you guys. But in the comics, they always had this Omar Sharif on Bridge. They had a little section in the comics, in the newspaper. I don't know if any of you remember that, because we don't even have newspapers anymore.
I can't say that I remember. I'm sorry.
But I was like, you know what? That's the only game I don't know how to play. I literally thought in the whole entire world, Bridge is the only game I don't know how to play. So I'm going to learn how to play it. Then I'll know how to play all the games. I'll make it complete. So that's why I started to learn Bridge. But then it wasn't until my first, in this world, modern gaming, kind of to answer your question, Estefania, was Catan. So I think, I mean, I don't know. It's a good discussion. I don't know what other people think, but I think Catan may have been the one that sort of was the crossover game that made the majority of people getting to this side. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I feel like that, it might be when the European games like came into like mainstream, American board gaming that we're thinking modern. Because like I think that is the turning point when American designers or American game creators, are now creating different games, more strategic games, rather than Mattel and Hasbro and the big box games that Walmart and Target used to only carry.
Right.
So I think it's when that happens, when people are seeing like these types of strategic or Euro games happening that are coming from Europe and seeing it in America, I think that's when what I think of in terms of like modern gaming was like Catan, Carcassonne, was it Ticket to Ride, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the start of what I believe modern gaming is, and then you go from there. From that point on, like then all the other games came into our consciousness. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if it wasn't, I think it's it's ethnocentric, right? To say that whatever the Americans thought of as gaming, changed. Then it became modern board gaming. But from my point of view, that it is Catan and Ticket Ride. Those are the starts of my view of what modern board gaming is.
So to kind of follow up on that, so does that mean that modern board gaming is more like an era, as in like any game that comes out now is kind of more modern board gaming, or is it more the type of game when it gets complex?
That's an awesome question.
Yeah, I think that's different.
What it makes me think of is I'm always, it's so hard to use any of these terms without like accidentally off-putting someone. Be like, I like modern games, and someone says like, here's Star Wars Episode 9 Monopoly, and you're like, not that modern board game. And so some people say like hobby board games, and people say, well, no, I played games throughout the 60s and 70s. That was my hobby. So it's so hard to come up with the terms. I don't know, maybe like the one that pops into my mind is perhaps like designer board games. I know it sounds almost highfalutin, like pinky in the air, but like I think one of the changes might have been coinciding with Settlers of Catan, when you have a board game that puts the designer's name on the box. Mm. That's kind of my thought, maybe, right? Is because then
whatever you say, it's going to be written on stone. So just go ahead.
Okay, sure, yeah. No, this is now doctrine according to Chris.
Mm-hmm.
The modern era began when people started printing names on box. Maybe, right? Because then it became a little bit more personal. Like a lot of us have a favorite director. Some people say, like, I'll go see any Quentin Tarantino movie, or I'll see any Christopher Nolan movie, or what I mean, like, the coming movie by Christopher Nolan called Tenet. Right. Nobody knows anything about it, and half the people are like, woo, all right, like
my husband's right there. He's like, I don't care, I'm going.
And so maybe that's what it has to do, because a lot of the games that we grew up with, Life and Monopoly and stuff, we don't know who is the designer of it.
Yeah, but you know what, Chris? I think you have a good point.
Okay.
I would say it goes into the access. And what I mean by that is, because if you think about it, at least somebody like me, again, I'm a little bit older, so I come from I have a little bit older sensibility to talk about, but it's the access. Because like I said, I thought I knew every game because I only saw games in Toys R Us or in whatever stores sold them back then. Like, what would it be? I don't even have, they're not even around, like Caldors or Kmart or whatever store. Sears are out of business now, right? So those were the only games I ever saw. That's why I literally thought those are the only, I knew every game. So I think what you're saying about the name sort of coincides with the access. And if you didn't step into a game store, then you never realized there were those other games.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I concede my point. Tim wins. Also helps that Grant pointed out, some of these games published in the 60s, right? They had the designers' names on them. But I mean, and so I would still classify those under like designer board games. Those 60s war games were very thoughtfully published and everything, perhaps more so than for saying like put a bunny on the box and kids will buy it, you know.
No, yeah, for sure. And I definitely do see that the difference of like, because you kind of how you said about having the name on the box. I feel like now that's the past few years that's been something that's more common. Obviously, it's been happening for a while, for the example. But it does seem like it's a combination of lots of small things that made into this modern board gaming. And it's very interesting to me because I think because I was so casual gaming for so long that I kind of, some of these things escape me. And now I talk to people and everyone's so knowledgeable. And I'm like, I feel like a first grader where I'm like, wow, everyone's so cool. And I'm like, I don't know sometimes what people say. So that's in the modern board gaming, that's like, and now it makes sense why I also don't know an exact definition, because there isn't an exact definition per se.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think there's anything exact. It's hard to specify almost anything.
Yeah, because even in town, like for me here in Las Vegas, you know, I got introduced to more of them from the Las Vegas board game meetup group. Mm-hmm. And that's when Stefan, who started it, introduced me to Board Game Geek. And once I got introduced to Board Game Geek, I lost my mind, right? I mean, that's a rabbit hole you never come out of right there, right? But I bought Munchkin, Catan, whatever else, from Barnes and Nobles, because I still didn't know what a board game store was. You know what I mean? I just didn't realize that was a thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I do love that. Yeah.
I agree with that because I used to go to a anime store, you know, back several years ago, and they used to play Magic there all the time. And so when I reconnected with those guys, some of the guys that played Magic when the anime store closed, they got together and opened up a board game store. And so when I walked in there, I'm like, wow, okay, what is this? What is this? You know, what's going on? They have a board game about chili peppers.
So many themes these days.
So that's what was really impressing me. And I think, like, when you mention modern board games, like when you look at something like Monopoly or Connect Four, and those games are like mass produced, you know, whereas you get a designer and they put their soul into this board game, and they create, like, they put their designer name on the box, and it's like their work of art. It's like a artist. That's what I love most about the board games is that, you know, their works of art. You know, you see them on the shelf and you're like, wow, I want to see that on the table again.
It's like artisan board gaming.
Yeah, you know, so that's what I think, you know, where modern board games come in is where people are like, I'm going to make this board game, you know, and they design it and they spend years on it, and then they put it out there on their own, you know.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because, again, yeah, exactly what you said, Dwayne. I agree, because it's sort of what Chris said about the name on the box. And again, you know, when we talk about a lot of these things, you know, the word diversity, you know, pops up to me, because a lot of times, you know, in the old school, the old days, anytime somebody said diversity, it always just comes to black and white. Boom. No, diversity is about everything. But what you just said, Dwayne, that is the thing, again, going back to Chris's point, because now instead of a company, like Chris said, right, you don't have Hasbro, you don't have Mattel, you don't have Parker Brothers, because I did an interview with Rob Davio, who worked at, he was just a cog in the wheel, right? He was just an employee for these big companies. So yes, but now with the diversity, when you have an individual, like Chris said again, so I think that's the right point, who is able to put their name on it, their thought, their different sensibility, instead of the corporate giant, right? The company doing it, the diversity of thought, of individual thought making these games, I think probably, Estefania, to answer your question, and I think Chris, you know, coming back to what he said about the individual name, no, it kind of, and I think you're right, Chris. I think that's what becomes modern now, when the name goes on the box, because that brings out the diversity where all different individuals can put their own stamp on a product now instead of Hasbro, Mattel. It's not just a corporation, it's the individual.
But it's also the access to diversity, like you said, right? Because even if there's diversity in the world, like there's, you know, there's games being made in Poland, there's games being made in Taiwan, there's games being made in, you know, Indonesia. If we don't have access to it, then we're not having access to the diversity. So it really, you know, it really does help to have, you know, content creators showcasing diverse games, you know, games from different parts or from diverse designers, and showcasing diverse artists and sculptors as well in order to bring that to public's eye.
Oh no, no, absolutely.
Estefania right here is like a perfect example of that. You have your Pop Cats Fighter game, a theme which I don't know if Hasbro or Mattel, you know, back in the day would ever say like, yeah, let's go ahead and go with that, right?
Yeah.
And you made it. You know, it wasn't some like council, the six of us got together and said, well, this decision will be more profitable. Scrap the cats. They're now, you know, our polls show that mongooses are more popular. So it's Pop Mongoose, the card combat game. You know, it's it's your product and you got to design it and make it. So there's something like I said, more personal about that.
Yeah, because again, like Dwayne said, when you go in, right, and you see the art, you see a different thing. Now, if you have, instead of a corporation saying, wait, you know, 70% of America is white, 70% is this income, we got to put this on the cover, we got to make the game like this for that audience, that's it. But no, when different, you know, ethnicities, groups, whatever cultures can put their art, their design, whatever on a box. Like Dwayne said, now you're going to have different people attracted to that product. So when he walked into a store, like he was saying, now there's going to be more that appeals to him because there's just more diversity in what is on the box cover, even the art, like you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially now that I'm designing I do almost everything in the game, design-wise, graphic design, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I talk to people who work for companies for board gaming. Even if they're kind of small, they still seem to have a list of what everyone does. And I'm like, you're telling me I'm doing 7 different jobs? You tell me that one person does this and then they pass it along, and I'm like, oh my God. So that the whole, and then they're not corporate necessarily, right? They're smaller companies, you know, sometimes just friends and stuff like that. But you do bring up a good point now that I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, so like the whole, it's me, that board game is me, you know, it's not made for everyone. It's made because I want to make it the way I want to make it, instead of having to have 7 different heads look at it. So yeah, that makes sense to me now, you know, talking about it.
Oh yeah.
Please
go ahead. So yeah, that, like, back to what he was saying about the box art. I mean, I just love that, like, people just really put, like I said, they put their soul, they put their all into this game, and they make it come to life. And it's not a mass production. Like, you've never heard of people running out of Monopoly, but you know, people run out of Wingspan, like, you know, and they got to, like, okay, we got to make some more Wingspans or whatever, you know. But if you go in, you got Monopoly, you know, and like the company mass producing them, and people are buying it.
Tim, you recently interviewed Jamie Steckmeyer on your on the YouTube channel here, right? And you did an interview with one of the. I forget if it was there that I heard it or one of his recent interviews. He talked about how Wingspan is on track to sell 1 million copies, like by the end of this year, I think, which is astounding because the prior Stonemaier games release, and he was pretty forthcoming with this number, which I thought was cool. They printed 20,000 copies of Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, which, besides having too long of a name, it was a great game, but it just didn't catch that fire. And so they printed 20,000 copies, and he said they're still sitting on half of them in warehouses.
Oh man!
And so it's amazing the difference that like a mega hit like Wingspan can have versus, I mean, 1 million versus the 20,000 is such a difference.
And she's like first time designer or second time. Like she's not a huge, I mean, now she is. Now it's Elizabeth Hargrave, right?
Yeah.
But before that, I mean, she was just another designer. So to get that in such a short amount of time, like that's insane. Like,
well, it's lightning in a bottle. Because
Yeah.
again, if you go to Meepleville YouTube channel and watch some interviews, there's a plug for me. But but what I'm saying, because that's a good point. You got Elizabeth Hargrave, her first design, right? A million copies, like Chris said. But then I also interviewed Alan Moon. Here you had somebody who's in the business for many years, done everything, had all hats, had his own even publishing company, everything, and he's he's thinking, man, I don't know if I'm still in it for the business, don't know if I have it, this or that. And then he's out walking his dog one day, comes up with Ticket to Ride, and boom, there's a million seller. But you have the different stories again with diversity. You have a man who's done everything. I don't know, was it 20 years he's been in the business?
Wow.
And in his own words, relatively no success, right? Then he gets the big Ticket to Ride. But now you've got Elizabeth Hargrave, her first design, a million copies. So it's just so funny how there's all different, whatever.
Ranges, yeah, the range of success and printing copies and stuff like that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So something that's impressed me recently is the Prospero Hall team, because they're the ones who designed. What are their big designs? The Disney Villainous games, the
Pan Am.
So actually, that is the one that I was going to pull out and show.
Yeah.
So they made that. It's really good.
Yeah, it is.
Villainous, Horrified, the movie monster one, and they make tons of just bizarre games, right? Like I think I just watched a review of Pop-Tarts, the card game.
Oh, I saw that.
I saw that one. That looks so cute.
Yeah, it looks adorable.
And they're this interesting blend between what we're talking about. They're a team of people. It's a large team too. If you look at their website, they have a very full staff. They have 5+ full-time designers. They have full-time graphic designers. They have marketing people. I'm sure that they have a legal department just negotiating the contracts with Kellogg's and say, can we please get the rights to Pop-Tarts, please?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know even who owns the rights to the name Pan Am at this point, but they got it, right? So they're a very full development house. So they're this perfect blend between like the big corporate, looking at figures, 70% of people, don't like birds, don't publish Wingspan, and then versus like these individual designers, these small house publishers that are, so they're like this blend of very passionate, very game focused, but also somehow like a really smart team that they don't put their individual designer names on the boxes. They say, no, we're Prospero Hall, or now Funko Games, or they got bought out, right? So they're this kind of semi-corporate like amalgam, and yet they're making really quality games, kind of like Amanda said, hitting the Target store shelves so that people buying groceries look over and say, hey, a Pop-Tarts board game, like what's that about? Let's buy it. And they're amazing. They're doing great.
Yeah, and I could be wrong on this. I'm not quite sure, but I think alluding to what you're saying, Chris, why that sort of is also a secret for success, because U2, the band, as far as I know, they're one of the reasons why they've stayed together, been successful, haven't had breaking up, is because every song, all 4 people are considered writers. So they're all getting the same amount of money. They're all getting the same everything. They have an equal share, and they've agreed, I guess, if they ever break up, okay, then it reverts to whoever wrote the song. But that's why I think maybe Prospero Hall is following that same model. Could be.
That's interesting.
Well, I think the one thing that they got going for them, because it's, when I go into a Target and I see Splendor or Sagrada, and I know people don't recognize, like, what is Splendor, what is Sagrada, but they'll see Monopoly and recognize it. But this company has taken, like, IPs that we know, like Disney Villainous, and they took Pan Am. People recognize Pan Am. People recognize the Godzilla game, you know, and people the Funko Pops, you know, Batman versus Golden Girls. Like, oh, like that's recognized. What is this about? Because they recognize that name. Then they do the Back to the Future game too.
Yeah.
See, so people recognize that, you know, and they're like, okay, I want to know what this is about. Whereas you get, you know, like I said, you got other games that show up in Target and people don't know, like, I don't know what Splendor, I don't know Sagrada. And then people like me look up and go in there and find Sagrada on the clearance shelf, you know, and I'm like, yeah, you know.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Dwayne. But let me ask you, do you think, what is the chicken or the egg in that? Do you think they're designing the game with the IP for the recognition? You know what I mean? Like, are they just doing games that have a recognizable IP or a name? Or, you know what I mean? Do you think they're doing that on purpose or no?
I think that it is a very good marketing strategy. I don't know if they're, you know, because the way the world is today, we're making, you know, they're making remakes of movies every day. They're retelling stories, and so, you know, I don't know if they're doing it on purpose. I don't think I can answer that, but I think it really helps them, you know, if that explains it.
And you'll have to have them over for an interview and see if they can answer all of our questions.
There you go.
Let me write that down.
Yeah, we gotta get them on.
I think I forget. Chris, someone was from the Funkoverse Prospero Hall team. They did an interview with Ludology, Emma Larkins and Gil Hova's podcast, and so that was really interesting to hear. That, yeah, I mean, part of their approach is like, let's make Golden Girls stuff. Let's make things that like people will buy, but underneath it is a real game. Like the designers are actually passionate about the games, not just like, let's crank out some things so we can slap a recognizable name on it. I was going to say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I don't want to make fun of your game, Amanda, your childhood or anything. But you know, a lot of these companies just want to make something slightly turtle-like, I guess, and then, you know, move around on little blue circles and white circles. If you land on a blue circle, draw a card. Like, those games are not those like passion projects. And so if you play Pan Am, it's a thinky, clever worker placement game. It does a couple of new things with worker placement, and it is just really a compelling game that you could tell that these people who made it underneath it had a passion for the actual gameplay. But also, if they can put that in front of someone with a recognizable theme and get them to buy it, like Dwayne, you made a great point, right? People walk right by an amazing game like Sagrada, and they say, I don't know what that is. But they'll buy Pop-Tarts. they'll buy Pan Am.
I want real Pop-Tarts now, like the Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, ever since I saw their game, I'm like, I got the taste for Pop-Tarts now.
Strawberry's my favorite. It's a classic. I can't help it.
I need it with icing though. Like without the icing.
Yes, with icing.
Yeah, you need it.
Yeah, it's just boring.
I'm the exact opposite. I got it right over there. Strawberry ones, no icing. I'm
No icing?
But toasted or not toasted?
not toasted.
Not toasted. He does not like that opinion.
Has anyone tried them frozen, like the game suggests?
No.
I just heard about that. I've never tried it.
I'm going to have to go buy a box of 24 and try it all different ways.
These ones microwave, these ones frozen.
Yeah.
These one left under the refrigerator for a few weeks. Come back to maybe that's the trick.
That's interesting.
Grapes. I've heard grapes frozen.
Oh, yeah.
Have you all tried that?
Grapes frozen is really good. And then add a little whipped cream onto the grapes. So good.
Oh, yeah.
Can't go wrong with that.
Because there's a lot of those shows on TV speaking about stuff like this, and they go across the country, right, to different fairs and festivals on like weird food. Like there's one place that serves like deep fried butter or something, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't get that. Deep fried, like,
deep fried.
Man, it sounds like heart attacks.
I think Crystal has tried it. I wish she were here because she. So friends of mine, they do a podcast called the Board Boys podcast, and they're based out of Iowa. I almost said Ohio. Sorry, guys. Of Iowa, and the Iowa State Fair is where they do the deep fried butter.
Oh, is that where it is? Yeah.
And I guess what happens is when you butter melts. And so when you lather it and what it does is it basically butters the batter. And so it becomes
the crunchy batter really butter flavored inside.
Yeah, because I thought I don't want to just bite into a stick of butter. That's not how I want to spend my weekend
anymore.
Right.
That's not what we want to do anymore.
I've had deep fried ice cream. I've had deep fried Oreos. I'm not
ice cream.
The deep fried ice cream is amazing. And then my dad added sweet and sour sauce to it. And it's so good. It's like not the sour sweet and sour sauce, but the pink sweet one. And it is so good. A vanilla ice cream deep fried with sweet and sour sauce. Yeah.
Is it still cold inside?
Yeah, it's still frozen inside. The ice cream is like just thawed just enough you can cut it with a spoon, but still cold inside. Yeah.
Let's go on a weird food tour of each other's houses really quick.
Yeah. I got the butter. Let's get started like that.
Yeah, you just make sure the ice cream is really frozen and drop it in the fryer briefly.
Yeah.
Just enough to crust it up and the ice cream is slightly melted.
Yeah, because actually Dwayne is a cook full-time. A chef.
Nice.
Sorry, I called you a cook, Dwayne, if you're a chef. So.
Oh, that's okay. I'm okay with cook. I think chefs are the people that have gone to school and gotten their degree. I've just spent my whole career working in the kitchen. So I just know my way around the kitchen.
Oh, there you go.
That's hard work.
What do you like to cook?
I'm more sandwich. My chef tells me that I know more about sandwich than he's forgotten about, or I've forgotten more about sandwich rather. But I'm more about sandwiches, solids, stuff like that. Soups. I'm really good with soups. I've done pretty much everything in the kitchen.
Well, what is your specialty when it comes to a sandwich? What is your best sandwich?
Oh man, that's a good question. Slim Miguel. Yeah, I did a sandwich at the I used to work at Russell Street Deli in Easter Market, and I made a sandwich called the Slim Miguel. It was kind of play on the Slim Jim.
Okay.
And we had some roasted poblanos in the house. So I was like, hey, let's take some ham. We had some cotija cheese, and we mixed the cotija and the cheddar and had a nice piece of ham, put the roasted poblano on top, melted the cheese on it, and we put it on a smashed and grilled Kaiser roll with an avocado mayo.
Ooh.
How I called it Slim Miguel, because we had an employee who was from Argentina. His name was Miguel. And when I come up with the name, I told him, we're going to call it Slim Miguel. And he ended up calling his mom in Argentina, they made a sandwich named after me.
That's so cute.
That's awesome. And it sounds delicious, my gosh.
It does. Tim, are you going to license the Slim Miguel from Dwayne?
I know, right?
Oh, we'll have to do that as a
Yeah, we'll have to do a little license. Dwayne's like Slim Miguel. A bunch of names, but it's going to work.
Dwayne.
Do you have any tips for Monte Cristos? I love the Disney where they use a beignet, that batter, and then put the Monte Cristo inside. Do you have any tips on getting a really good Monte Cristo?
I don't know. My wife loves a Monte Cristo sandwich.
Yeah.
So do I have any tips? Actually, I don't. I mean, the last Monte Cristo I made a French toast, pretty much a French toast batter, and had a nice ham, and I did a cherry, because I'm from Michigan, so I use a Michigan cherry jam. and it came out really, really good. I'm trying to think what kind of cheese. Oh, it was there is a Gouda cheese. It's like a wine. It tastes like grape wine.
Oh,
Drunken Gouda. That's what it's called.
Drunken Gouda.
Yeah, it's called drunken goat cheese, and it tastes like grape wine.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, I was like, write it down, please. Send me the info.
I'm going to tell you, Dwayne, you're my type of guy because I'm not a foo-foo type of eater. You know what I mean? I don't like all that, the big plate with the little portion, like all that kind of stuff. But man, like a man like you who is a sandwich connoisseur, that I'm going to tell you, I could get down with that all day. I'm
a sandwich guy.
Yeah,
I would do a sandwich in a minute, real quick. And it's funny because my wife still gets mad at me because, I work in the kitchen all day and I come home and she be like, what you going to cook for dinner? I said, I just want a sandwich. And she's like, people will tell you like, oh, you're married to a chef. Wow, you eat good. She's like, no, I don't.
Lots of sandwiches. Lots of sandwiches.
For her.
She like every now and then I might get the urge to cook at home, but it's kind of hard. Like when you cook all day at work,
Absolutely.
You come home, now you got to cook at home. You're like, no, I'll just take a sandwich.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
See, and I assume that about most jobs. That people say, oh, the joke in our house is that I'm the accountant. I don't actually do tax work. Most people obviously think tax account. That's what they think, right? But they always say like, oh, They talk to my wife. They talk to Wendy, and they say, "Oh, you're married to an accountant. Good. You'll never have to do the taxes." She goes, "No, I do the taxes." I don't want to touch that,
Yeah.
No, but that's sort of like a good topic to kind of talk about, right? Because we're all in gaming somehow, and does it ruin it when we try to turn gaming into either making money or somehow away from just as a hobby, even though, again, a podcast or a video cast or YouTube can still be a hobby, but does it take a little bit away from the passion or the enjoyment of playing games?
I think if you over schedule yourself, like because it's like there's just so many games and you'll never play all of them. But if you have a stack of games and you're like, I need to get through it, I need to play it so that I can review it, so I can post it, and then you're like, but it keeps adding on, right? The stack gets larger and larger, and you don't say no. You need to have boundaries. You need to be able to say no. You need to have that break from creating content or trying to just make money, because I think anytime you turn anything into just about making money, you just lose all fun, unless making money is the fun part, right? But for us, board gaming is not about making money. It's about interaction, playing, learning strategy, trying to force us to think of different ways. So I think it's just a boundary. You have to, if you set the right boundaries, if you know yourself well enough to set your schedule and know your expectations, like don't raise it so high that you'll never ever reach it, right? Then I think you'll never get really burnt out. But it's so easy to get burnt out, trying to make content for board games, and then board games is no longer fun because you're doing it to make content instead of just playing the game to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I get that. That one of my challenges with doing the YouTube channel is time. Finding time. Like, the day job, I go in, I work in the middle of the day, so I'm like 11 to 8. So I had to get up and go make sure the house is okay, go to work, come home. Now I'm like, tired, but I want to play a board game, So that's the biggest challenge that I have is time,
Yeah.
But if you love it, like I said, it is hard work. And like you said, if you're going into it to make money, then, then you're going to become stressed. But if you're doing it because you love it and you happen to make money because of it, then you're lucky. You know, consider yourself blessed. You know. So I always tell my kids, find out what you want to do, and so you can love it, make it a career, and then, you know, the money will come after that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, like, for me, for instance, with Meepleville, and I know Grant feels the same way. We talk about this stuff all the time. Is I never went in it to make money. I mean, I'm not. No, that's kind of stupid to say, because of course, when you open a business, you want to make money. Well, I'm not going in it to lose money, of course. But the games are the vehicle. Because my big passion is just getting people together. I love seeing people play games. I love having, like, 3 generations at a table, a grandparent, parent, kids sitting together playing games. I love when I see, kids who are between, like, say 16 and 24 come in and play a board game, because I know that technology and phones and iPads and not associating with actual human beings is more their life than associating with human beings. So seeing all that and knowing that we created a place, and then that's why I keep saying we, because Grant's been a big part of it. We have created a place where people can come and do that. And you're right, being able to do that and being able to make money on top, well, not making money now especially, but but normally being able to make money from what you've produced or getting the people together, that's the passion. And yes, hopefully the profits and all of that will come out of that.
Quick mic check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I know the mask on. Just to jump in on this one, since I do have a really good side of that. I absolutely still have the passion for board games, love my job here, but just like how Dwayne said, like, once you take it home, my at-home gaming has dropped off significantly. Like, I probably don't game as much at home because I'm doing it so much here. I'll take a new game home to learn it anytime a new game comes out, because I want to be able to teach that to somebody. I can probably teach way more games than I've ever actually played myself, just because I know the rules, but I've never personally sat down with friends to play it. Yeah, there's a little bit of, love lost there with my own personal at-home gaming. Wouldn't do it once a week type of thing, but I still like to get friends together for it. But it definitely has changed my overall perspective for it. That once you're doing it so much, you're like, all I'm doing all day long for work. So yeah, it's hard to want to take any of that home. So I still enjoy it for sure, but it's definitely just, if I can go do something else, I'm also going to enjoy that as well.
Yeah, sometimes you have to take a break.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, balance yourself. Yeah.
I mean, there's a chunk of time for our podcast where at the beginning, it was so easy and so fun, because what are we going to review when we first start off? We don't have, like, any connections with publishers. Can you please send us review copies? We have 0 episodes, So we're just like, pull something off the shelf. Like, we played 5 Tribes a bunch of times before we ever started recording. Let's review that one. That one's a good one. And so when you start off doing that, it's easy. And then you come to a point where you're like, I'm running out of shelf space, or I'm running out of shelves of games that we haven't talked about yet. And so thankfully for us, because of Meepleville, we would go down there and we would learn new games, and we'd play them a handful of times. We'd play them, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And then be like, okay, cool. Now this is a game that we can review. And so, I mean, Meepleville was like a board game cafe like that was perfect, because then we didn't have to buy all of the games. And so, but then that kind of ate into our personal date night, because we'd go there for Friday date night, and we'd say, all right, like, this is a game that we have to play. We have to play this 2 more times before we're comfortable reviewing it. And that kind of ate into our personal enjoyment. So we had to figure out that balance of, like, no, today we're here just for fun. We'll talk about something different on the podcast. We won't review a brand new hot, game that everyone's, talking about, everyone's anxious to hear about. Let's just have some fun this time. And so finding that balance after getting too caught up in it for so long, that was like a weird step, but it made us so much more able to just enjoy and have fun playing games again.
I can definitely relate to that too, especially with the small business temp, how you were saying before, like, because my husband and I, we started a business in 2010, 2011 that's called NinjaBot. and it's basically his work because he's an illustrator. So at the beginning, we used to design posters ourselves, like both of us, and we did all these like stickers and stuff like that, and it was all super fun, and because everything felt very new. And so we kept going through the business and stuff like that because we wanted to, right? Like, and again, it's like you said, like, we were not in it for the money. Yeah, we want to make money, but really we're not like, I think when people say like, we're not in it for the money, it's like, we're not in it to make millions of dollars. We're not in it to be like the next influencer. Like, we want to have enough money to take care of ourselves, take care of our family, and take care of the business. But after a while, after like 5-6 years, it starts to become a thing that you're like, okay, now I have to make a poster. I have to do this because otherwise money's going to stop coming in, right? So then it slowly, not even slowly, it can very fast deteriorate if you stop the flow. You kind of always have to keep pushing forward and forward and forward. So at some point, for us, I think, or at least for me, the passion of doing things became a job. It's a job that I enjoy 95% of the time, but sometimes work is work. I'm like, I don't want to do this, but you just have to, because it's part of the flow. And once you give yourself a break and stuff like that, then eventually you go back into like, oh, I have an idea. This is so much fun, So I think it's a little bit of both for everybody. You at some point, we're doing it so long, sometimes if the money is not there, and usually that means there's stress there, then I think that you do lose a little bit of the passion, but the love is still there, I think, for most people.
Yeah, I get that. So, I mean, I feel the same way about cooking. Like I said, I've been cooking for so long, and sometimes it does become work, and I still enjoy, like, especially in today's world where everybody is very specific of how they want their meal prepared. I love, what I love most about cooking is, first of all, the presentation. Like that's half the battle right there, when they see their meal on the plate, and then you're halfway there already, and then the enjoyment that you see that I get when I see that they're really enjoying this meal. And that kind of relates to board games also, because board games is like the presentation. It is just like the box art, the components, the artwork on the cards, just the presentation just draws you in, especially with table presents.
Yeah, I think about the presentation just as much as the game. I mean, I don't know if it's typical or not for other designers, but to me, I need to know that when you look at it, everything looks nice, everything looks put together, and I have to figure out how to make the game work into that. And sometimes it's backwards. Sometimes I have a thing in the game that I'm like, this needs to be there. How do I make the design work with that? But the presentation and the game, to me, they go hand. It's yin and yang. Like,
oh yeah, and it's come a long way too, right? Because if you think about it, like we were all talking about, you look at Sorry. Was that the one with the push bubble in the middle?
Yeah.
Trouble.
Oh yeah, Trouble.
Trouble. Yes, one of them.
Trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you look at it back then, a lot of the games were all kind of samey, right? They just had like a fold-out board. They had a couple of like the classic pawns, and maybe dice. Like everything was sort of standard. But yeah, the presentation and I think the bar, unfortunately, in a sense, keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher because of technology and how accessible it is to sort of everybody, right? Because look at Estefania and Arnell, right? You got an artist, you got a graphic designer, they can do it themselves, but you got to step up because the miniatures and the components and all the stuff is just so good in so many games these days.
Absolutely. There's a lot of competition and a lot of games out there that you could easily just be compared to, just because there's so many. Like, it's just unavoidable. The market is full, and it's great because it brings so many. Every game brings somebody new, I think.
Yep.
Every game has that one person that they brought in, so it all helps. But at the same time, you know, when you're making the game, like, there's 200 games behind you, and somehow you have to pop just a little bit more than all the other ones, right? Just to catch somebody's eye. So I think that's a very important part of how it works these days.
I think, yeah, any genre has at least 100 games, you know, any mechanic has 100 games, you know, any theme, well, except for maybe birds, but, you know, has a whole bunch of games attached to it. So there's something for everyone, which is amazing. But to sell, you know, you need, you know, to recoup your costs, you need to sell a certain number of games. And how to do that is, you know, really hard, especially since board games is sort of like still a niche genre. It's still a niche, right? It's still, you know, a small thing in retail, right? Versus like clothes and other stuff. So it's really hard to get people, and plus it's a luxury. It really is, right? So
yes, it definitely is a luxury. You know, I remember, like, in this neighborhood, like when me and my wife was first dating, and she told me they had put up, like, I was really into comics, so they put up a comic book store in her neighborhood, and she was like so ecstatic, like, hey, there's a comic book store. And I was like, yeah, it's not gonna last long. And she was like, well, why would you say that? And I'm like, well, because so the neighborhood is you have a lot of people that their disposable income, they don't have a lot of it. And then those people that do have disposable income, they're more interested in the Foot Locker next to it. You know, they're more interested in clothes and gym shoes or whatever. They're not going to go into that comic book store. Now, me, I would love going in the comic book store. I would live in the comic book store. But, you know, I really hope they survive. But, you know, it's a luxury. And I say a couple months later, the comic book store closed. And I, you know, but yeah, board gaming is a luxury, but it's a luxury I love.
It is. In the industry, I think that's one of the problems that they have with different type of groups because of exactly what you just said, Dwayne. I mean, you know, not a lot of America can regularly spend $40, $50, $90 on a box of cardboard. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, that's what it is. You know, $90 can feed, you know, quite a few people for several days, but you're going to go spend it on a box of cardboard. So there is a certain part of America or subset, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, whatever, but that can do that on a regular basis. So it does cut out a lot of people. But, you know, again, I'll just make a plug for Meepleville. I hope that a place like Meepleville, you know, we have 2,500 games, can provide that kind of place, like even Cristo. You know, instead of him and Wendy having to buy a game, you can just come up to my place and we have it there for you. So hopefully it gives it to access to more people to experience these games that are expensive.
No, I totally agree.
And it helps people, like, if you find a game that you really love, you know, it's cool to have at least, maybe you can buy like 5 or 10 of these games at home, and then you can go to a place at like Meepleville to play the rest of them, you know. But you got ones that you and your family enjoy, and like I said, it brings families to the table, you know, and that's the whole that's why I really got into the YouTube, you know, the board game thing is, you know, we used to live in a world where people ate dinner at the table together just so they could have discussion. Now you got one person in the basement on the Xbox eating their sandwich, and one person on the TV, and another person on their phone. Whereas with board games, you can't do that. You know, you're coming together for interaction, social interaction. And like I said, if you find a game that you love, you can buy that game. You don't have to go crazy like I did. You know,
no, exactly. That's why
find a couple games that you would love to bring to the table.
Yep. And that's why, because they're invited. Unfortunately, they're just so busy now, but hopefully they'll be here one time, is Mick and Starla with Our Family Plays Games. I mean, I'm so happy that they've gotten so much heat, so much press, so much popularity. You know, people are buying their T-shirts because, again, like you said, Dwayne, that's such a good point, is what games do. And I think at the end of the day, that's why we're all in it, right? Because we all love sitting at a table, sharing our love, our passion, playing a board game with other people. Because you're right, Dwayne. Families have gotten away from doing things together, even as simple as sitting at a table eating food. Because people don't do that anymore. But they do come together to play games. So Mick and Starla have sort of reignited, I guess I would say, or whatever, that whole Our Family Plays Games. You know, that's their logo, their company, whatever. But, you know, when people walk around, it's so smart because it's like Our Family Plays Games. So you don't necessarily know you're promoting Mick and Starla because you're just making a statement. Our Family Plays Games, which I think is just so great. They've done such a fantastic job doing that. And it would be nice to see dozens, hundreds of people just walking around, Our Family Plays Games, Our Family Plays Game. You know, it's just really cool.
It's a brilliant slogan. It really is. I mean, slogan / name or whatever.
I agree.
Yeah, really. Because like in Vegas, I just saw, so there's, and you probably know this, Chris, over at off of Tropicana, not too far from UNLV, like Tropicana in Maryland, there's an escape room. And when you go by in all their advertising, it says #1 escape room in Vegas, #1 escape room in Vegas. But guess what? That's their actual name. Like,
that's so great.
Yeah, their name is like #1 escape room LasVegas.com or LLC, whatever. That's their actual company. So they're not lying. That's what it is. And so, so I don't know if Mick and Starla intended that. I mean, if they did, it's brilliant, but it's just fantastic.
It just works either way. Yeah, that's really good. That's very smart.
And the funny thing I'll say about that #1 escape room is that it's on this hideous, bright yellow sign that is impossible to ignore. Like, it's not as egregious as like the head-on commercial, you know, head-on, apply directly to the forehead, right? But it's that type of thing where you look at it, you just go, oh yeah, right. But I'm still looking at that sign, and I'm still going to remember what it's called when I talk to my friends about it later.
That's what matters. That's what matters.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I forgot, Chris. That's not too far from your house over there because we sort of live in the same area of town. It's the old Liberace Museum, actually.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Which is too bad that it's still not currently the Liberace Museum, but also, you know, there's a dated quality to having a Liberace Museum.
Only in Vegas.
I don't know. That's what the college kids are, you know, hey, what do you want to do this weekend? Well, I was thinking.
Isn't that funny? No, how like people like like even Elvis, right? He's starting to disappear, I guess, or whatever. And think about it. What about people we've grown up with, like say like Michael Jackson, right? Will there ever come a point? Well, not ever. There is going to come a point where people aren't going to know who he is, right?
Absolutely.
They're going to forget like all that kind of stuff. So,
but you know, people still know who Frank Sinatra is. I mean, I guess it's just like something that will constantly be in the vernacular, maybe, because like we say hang up the phone, but kids under the age of 20 have no idea why we say hang up the phone, because they don't know phones used to be on a wall and we used to physically hang them up, right? You know, I mean, my friend bought a house and there's a little alcove and they're like, what's that alcove for? I'm like, for your phone and so you can write your messages. And they're like, oh, I see. And I'm like, you know, we're the same
analog.
Exactly, which is hilarious, you know, but, you know, it's the stuff that's still going to be in the vernacular. It's just that you have to go to Wikipedia to figure out why, you know?
No, absolutely. But I just mean how it just keeps diminishing, because instead of, like you're saying, Frank Sinatra, instead of having, say, a Frank Sinatra impersonator, you know, headline the Mirage or whatever, now you've got like the Rat Pack at like some little off the strip, like, you know, fifth-rate hotel. It's just like, you know, and you don't have an Elvis show. I don't think there is like an Elvis impersonator headlining or even in any major casino in Vegas anymore. Now it just keeps going down and down and down and down, you know, because of their audience.
Yeah, I think certain names and certain, you know, musicians or anyone becomes a name, a household name. I think slowly, you know, it fades away, right? And but there's always a consistency, right? Like names will last forever. Everyone will always know the history of it. But it is kind of funny too, because I was talking to my nieces, and the oldest one is she's 9, and I was like listening to the radio. This is just happened with me like recently, but like a song from NSYNC came up, which is a boy band. I don't know if you guys know.
I was a Backstreet Boys person, but you know.
I was both, but a little bit on the NSYNC side. But that's a whole different meeting. But the thing is that she heard it and it said like vintage music, and I was like, vintage? I'm 32. Like, it's not vintage. You know, it's stuff like that. And she's like, who is that? And like, it's a brand new band for them, right? And I'm like, you know, Justin Timberlake, who's that? And I'm like, never mind.
He's so big. He's a troll.
But to her, she's young, and she does have like abs, and you know, she has friends, but they don't really know who JT is. They don't know who Justin Timberlake is. And I'm like, my God, I'm only 32.
It is.
I mean,
doesn't that work both ways somehow though? Because it's like new artists that I don't know who they are.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And they're listening to that like, oh, this is by that, you know, whatever, and I'm like, who's that?
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, it works both ways.
Yeah, it does. It's the new generation. It's unavoidable.
It is unavoidable. It and that's one of the hard things is, you know, people that used to be household names inevitably over time, like you said, Tim, it's not a question of if, it is a question of when. You know, people say, I like listening to classical music. Oh, who's your favorite composer? Schubert or Mendelssohn? And they're like,
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that'll happen. But some names just stick through still, like
I think
Mozart and Beethoven.
But it's what's taught, right? Because we're taught Mozart and Beethoven in school. If we're taught Magic Johnson or Fate Sinatra, you know, in school, it'll never go away, you know? And it's like, it's also like to turn it back onto board games. Like, what are board games that, you know, have stood the test of time that everyone still knows about, right? Your poker, your, you know, your spades and stuff like that. It's because people still teach it, right? People still teach it to their younger generation and still play it. And it's only because of that it stands the test of time, right?
Right, but again, speaking of games, there are things that, you know, people, because in the bridge world especially, there is a real fear that bridge may sort of kind of disappear, because that is a game that isn't coming down. It is, but not as much as it could or should be, and it may be kind of lost eventually because it just isn't trickling down. But real quick, I just want to say, I'm going to send you guys, I wish I had it. I should probably spend the time looking up. I saw this little video on YouTube today. I don't know if any of you guys have saw it, speaking about board games, but this one channel did a segment from 2000 to 2020. They did this color graph of the top 20 board games, or I think it was, or whatever, on Board Game Geek. And what
3-minute board games is the name of the channel.
So you know what I'm talking about.
He's an amazing content creator in general. I haven't watched this video yet though. But I just want to make sure to cite him correctly,
because it's kind of like what we're talking about standing the test of time, because it shows like, you know, like it's going horizontal with like, say 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and it shows like all of a sudden, like if it starts dipping, it comes down, and then all of a sudden you'll see like a game pop up, you know, and come there, and just how they move and all that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
And then there's stuff I learned, like I didn't know there's this whole big Space Hulk thing in gaming. Because when I was watching this 3-minute thing, all of a sudden you see the Space Hulk come up and like immediately go down in like a matter of 2 or 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
And the story I found out is because it debuted, it was hot on BGG, but Games Workshop gave BGG a cease and desist and said, hey, you can't promote the IP or do all this kind of stuff. So they took it off, and the popularity just dropped immediately, kind of thing. It's just, and then I watched Agricola specifically because I got into board games. Like when I got into board games, Agricola, when I found BGG, I should say, Agricola was number one. And I saw it was in 2008 when I kind of got in this world. And I was like, man, if I'm going to be a gamer, if I'm getting in this world, I got to learn the number one game because that's going to make me a real gamer. And I just kind of watched it. I kept seeing it like drop and drop. And I was like, oh, my heart's breaking. But yeah, 3-minute board games. Go watch it. It's phenomenal. Really.
Yeah, I'll check it out. That sounds funny.
Because Jay does awesome. Like his channel is great in general. Like because his channel is called 3-minute board games, and literally their overviews very quick of the game. He uses like a stop motion, I guess, where like he'll have a picture of stuff. He'll kind of set it up really, stuff pops up, gives a quick overview, gives very concise, very smart thoughts on games. And he's a very fun person to follow on social media, on Twitter and stuff. So Jay from 3-minute games is very cool. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I've been meaning to watch it, so I'm going to do that tonight.
Yeah, check it out. It's really fascinating. But speaking of that, like, and we were talking about, people, what do you guys think is maybe 1, 2, or 3 games that either have stood the test of time or will continue to stand the test of time of these type of games? Like when Estefania was saying modern board gaming or whatever.
That's hard.
That's a thinker, Tim. That is a thinker.
Well, you said Catan is kind of this for you, Amanda. You said it kind of seemed like the start of it, right? Like kind of the transition to modern board gaming.
Well, I think that as long as Target and Barnes and Nobles keeps Catan Ticket to Ride on their shelf, just like they've been doing for Monopoly, as long as they keep it on their shelves, I don't think Catan or Ticket to Ride would ever go away, because it's just such a low rules overhead. Like people can pick it up, learn it by themselves. They don't have to watch a video. They don't have to know any terms. You know what I mean? And they can get into it and they can play it, right? So I think it's those types of games where, you don't have to be a hobby gamer to understand it, that will stand the test of time. But it's also about, it's just about, can you get it? So if it stays at Target, if it stays at Barnes and Nobles, and people continually can get their hands on it very easily and inexpensively, then people will continue playing it. And it's something. It's what we call gateway games, because we're continuously teaching it to new players, right? So it's always going to be like, oh, if I have a child that's around 10, I'll teach them that first. And then in their mind, that's their first board game, right? And then they'll have nostalgia. And then when they grow up, they might teach that game to their children, right?
Right, so it's their first game.
Right, it's their first game. So it's like my first little scythe, or, that one. So as long as it's those types of games that I think will come in as the next generation finds it and keeps it going. And I can see Ticket to Ride and Catan like continually being, on the shelves, just like Monopoly, right? But I don't think,
No, I was just going to say, do you think, like you said, Catan and Ticket to Ride, do you think they will be sort of like a chess or a checkers? You know what I mean? Like, how those classic games have stayed. Do you think Ticket to Ride and Catan will be those kind of games that will be in that category? So say 100 years from now, people will still be playing Ticket to Ride and Catan?
I think it's going to be more like a Monopoly, where they'll play it with their family, or they'll play it when they first get into it. But then, either they're going to move on to something like more strategic, or they might move on to something else, right? But it's going to be one of those that when people say Catan and Ticket to Ride, they're going to know, oh, I know what that game is, kind of like with Monopoly. I don't see Monopoly going away anytime soon, even though, we have so many games, and a lot of us say, we like this game a lot better than Monopoly, right? But I also don't see Monopoly going getting away. As long as, Mattel and Hasbro, they're in business, they're not going to let it die out.
Right. Me personally, I would sort of disagree with you a tiny bit. maybe, no, it's just for discussion. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I think, just what I've noticed, that again, because, Dwayne brought up the point that families aren't getting together, doing stuff, eating. I don't know if a lot of younger kids, 18, 19, 20, have grown up as a family playing Monopoly. Like, I know I did, and I don't know, maybe you guys did, because I'm a lot older. I don't know if they're doing it, but I do know that a lot of those kids, 18, 19, 20, do know Cards Against Humanity as sort of their game. So,
that's true.
And Amanda, I'm only disagreeing with you with the fact because I don't think the family dynamic sort of is the same. So I'm not quite sure a lot of people who are 20 and under have grown up playing Monopoly. I mean, I don't know. I don't have kids. So maybe you guys know or have cousins, nieces, nephew that age. So
I just only say that because I like almost everyone I know that has touched any type of board game, like will have played at least Monopoly once, right?
Okay.
So and then like they talk about it, right, to their kids. But you're right, like family now are mixed or they're broken, or it's more like the family you choose, not the family you're born into, that type of thing. And that's why I say, the games that anyone can just pick up and learn quickly and easily and can just start playing, might stand the test of time better than someone who has to know what a trick-taking game is, or has to know, what a worker placement mechanic is, or, has to get through like 2 different rule books to figure out a game. Those probably won't be for everyone and won't be in the casual vernacular of society.
It's interesting because what you said, Tim, earlier was you asked if like Catan or Ticket to Ride would be a classic like checkers or chess, you said. But then before that, it was Monopoly. And I feel like they're all classics. But I think chess, specifically chess and checkers, are a different one that I think will surpass Monopoly because of its simplicity. And in simplicity, and I mean in the sense of like learning the rules and how it looks. They look very plain. I mean, checkers and chess look the same at first look. One of them has fancier tokens, but at the end, like pawns, right? But at the end of the day, they look very simple to someone who has no idea what those kind of games are. So I think they're easier to pick up and easier to make. Like, for example, if you go to a beach or you're in the street and you get some black pieces or another color piece, right? You could make a board on the floor. You could have chalk and kind of do checkers and stuff like that and have a token that moves around. I think that simplicity is what those games are. I mean, obviously I don't know, but it's kind of like forever games. Those will be easily taught through time. It's kind of what everyone seems to play since they were way younger. I can say Monopoly and most people will know it. I feel like if I say chess or checkers, like more people will know it. And I think those are real classics that will last forever. And Catan and Ticket to Ride will probably be sort of a classic, but in the same genre as Monopoly or Life, where they have just a slower decay throughout time. But like my nieces know like about checkers and even like spades or poker, like they're aware of those things. Because again, poker is the same deck of cards, but you can play, I don't know how many games you can play with that same 52 cards, right? There's so many, right? So
and Tim knows all of them, is what he said.
Yeah. So the accessibility of that.
Listen, I'm not the only. Come on, I can't be. I'm not the only one.
You're not.
I thought they knew every game. Come on, I mean.
No, it's true. There's that one deck buys you 50, 100 games, whatever it is, right? In different versions, because different cultures have different versions of the same game. Same thing with dominoes. They're so classic because they're so simple to look at and easily recognizable, So I think those games are different than modern game ones that will last a long time. like Monopoly. Clue, to me, Clue is one of my favorite ones because that's the first one that I played from all the ones that I had. So it was just interesting how you said Monopoly first and then you said checkers and chess, because I don't think they're in the same category.
I agree. They're checkers and chess are abstract games, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's like, well, I agree that checkers, chess, poker, right? But like mahjong, because it's just so integrated into culture, right? You have the poker deck because it's so integrated into like the gambling culture, and that's just everyone like has touched it at one point, right? But mahjong is so integrated into Asian culture that that will never go away. And then I don't know, checkers and chess. I mean, I think everyone knows about it, but you never know. It could slowly just fade away too, because people don't want to just sit with only one person, or like there's ancient games with dice that we don't know how to play anymore, right? So you don't know how long that is going to stand. But I hope it stays forever.
No, you're right, and it depends. Again, I mean, this is one of those whole really how deep a conversation you want to get into. But I mean, I love this stuff. I really do. Because I like having conversations where whether you agree, don't agree. I just like talking about just weird stuff. But no, like what Estefania said, I think is sort of important, because like I think it's sort of debatable, arguable what the first game was, right? And a lot of people say, if you want to say people came from Africa, where everybody came from, that maybe Mancala, because like she said, you can pick up rocks and stones. With Mancala, you just dig a hole in the ground and you could use rocks or seeds or whatever. So if you're talking about that, and in the future, who knows where we're going to be in the future, but when it comes down to it, yeah, we may not have produced components. So if there are only games that you can make from what you have in life, then yeah, it's probably never going to be like Ticket to Ride and Catan ever get in that discussion, because that's right. But that's like real deep and stupid.
No, yeah.
You're getting into like Road Warrior here, Tim. Like
apocalypse. Yeah. It does seem like the apocalypse right now, so you just never know.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's something to be said about just the idea of, I mean, I know that maybe to go down that train of thought, I sound possibly pessimistic, but I don't know if any published, like produced game will still be around in 100 years. You know what I mean? Monopoly is that absolute outlier. I don't know the name of any other games that were being produced 100 years ago. The morality game, right? We kind of became Chutes and Ladders. So, but that was even of ancient Indian descent, which was, I forget what it was called, but it was a game about morality and teachings and stuff. Make correct decisions, go up the ladder. Make bad decisions, go down a snake. So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of the mindset that 100 years from now, I don't think Catan or Ticket to Ride even have a chance. I think people will still be playing with rocks, chess, checkers, Mancala. And to Amanda's fantastic point, right? I'm thinking of this so much from just like an American perspective, but Mahjong is one of these ancient games that's been around for so long, and it's now becoming part, I think, a little bit more of the public zeitgeist, so to speak. What is the movie? It's
Crazy Rich Asians.
Crazy Rich Asians. Thank you.
I was thinking that too, but I was like, I'm not sure.
And so that has an amazing little mahjong sequence, right, where they're sitting down to a game of it, and they're kind of talking out this very serious, heavy relationship thing, right? These two characters, and one of the main characters is making this point while making a very interesting play in the game as well, and I think that people look at that and say, oh, this is cool. This is really something that we're not as aware of and everything, because we're used to playing like mix and match mahjong, on our little like computers or whatever. So it was cool. People saw it and said, oh, that's a real game. That's really nifty.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to hear people talk about it, because in the scene, it can be very easily to gloss over that you don't understand why she just showed her tiles, right? But for anyone who's played mahjong, you're like, oh, she could have won. And a lot of people didn't realize that she lost on purpose. You know what I mean? And when you when you hear people like review the movie and they're like, oh, you know, they got that nuance from just the game and showing, you know, like the play between players. I think that's another reason why, you know, poker, chess and checkers, it's a game between players. It's not just the board. You know, you're not just worrying about what piece goes where. You're thinking, oh, what is that? What's my opponent thinking? What is my opponent going to do? You know, and that's what makes it interesting. It's such a psychological game on top of everything else.
Right.
It's funny. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Estefania.
I was just going to say, kind of what both of you said, Chris, you said, you know, in 100 years, we're still going to be playing with stones kind of thing, right? And then Amanda, you talked about like the psychology of having to think what the other person is thinking, not necessarily playing what's on the table. And I'm not a sports person, but I think that's why also sports will be around for a long time, certain sports, because you just need a ball. You just need a ball to play a bunch of games. You know, we have like just
talking
something
about games copying each other's components, right?
Yeah, they just have one ball and it's like all of them, they're the same, right? No, but they have a thing where like you don't need to know all the rules either. Like kids can play soccer, right? And they don't necessarily know all the rules, but they can play, right? And it's that accessibility that, and it's not just playing the field, but it's playing against that person who's like, are they going to go right? Are they going to go left? And I think all the sports have it. So like you said, maybe in 100 years, we won't have manufactured games, but there's certain games that will be so accessible still in the future that I think will last for a long, long time.
True, absolutely. And I think one of the things, at least when it does come to manufactured games, and like if we're going to keep using Monopoly as sort of the barometer or like whatever, I think the reason is because, and same thing with Mahjong, right? Like you're saying, Amanda, whatever, because I mean, I don't know, I'm sure there were a couple others. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the Asian culture like that, but what I mean is Mahjong may have been one of 4 games that people played. And Monopoly is sort of the same thing, right? It went X amount of years where it was the only, not really, but you guys know what I mean, mass-produced game that everybody had. So nowadays, you're never going to get that period of time where it's the only game. Like Mahjong may have gone hundreds, if not thousands of years as the only game, right? I mean, that people like played. So that's where we're up against these days. You guys see what I mean, sort of?
Yeah.
Now, to Estefania's point really quick, as living proof that you can play sports without knowing all the rules, I was in league soccer, you know, in elementary school, and I knew one rule: don't touch the ball with your hands.
Yeah, that's what everyone knows. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
That got me through 2 years of soccer knowing that rule only.
Yeah, that's, you know, and you can play like that. That's what I did when I was younger for a long time.
Yeah. Think about it. Soccer, out of all sports in the world, that's one ball, or not even a ball. I mean, you could wrap up socks or do whatever, but you got 22 people playing one game with one object. So
yeah, it's accessible.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the time in the park, it's okay. This trash can to that trash can's a goal. Like. Done, you know what I mean? So and that's kind of what some of these games are. Like checkers is just so manageable. You know, if I can find a couple of pieces that are sort of one color and you can find some that are sort of a different color, we're in business.
Yeah.
Accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Checkers has like 2 rules, basically 3 rules I can think of, right? Move diagonally, jump, and king.
Yeah,
that's it. But I think with people when playing chess, like I was telling my uncle rather, because he couldn't get anybody to play chess with him, and I was like, yeah, because nobody's prepared to lose 50 times. You know,
that's so true. Yeah.
You know, so I was like, you know, I know the basics of chess. I don't play it enough, and you know, they're not gonna want to lose that many times. So I ended up buying him a copy of Onitama, you know, And I, introduced it to him and his grandson. And I said, see, now you're more on a level playing field. More than likely, you probably would still win, but all the information's on the table, and so he has to figure out, he knows what moves you can make. And so they really enjoyed the game, and I was like, see, there you go. Now you guys can play this game because, like I said, chess is straight skill. There's no luck involved in chess, straight skill. So, I was happy to introduce that to him.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, Dwayne, how board games, modern board games, are such a good equalizer because, again, all these classic games we're talking about, right? Whether it's Mahjong, like Go, chess, any of these backgammon, right? Any of these games, like, you're right. There's somebody like your uncle who is a master or whatever, he's very proficient. It's not going to be fun. There's no equalizer. You need X amount of plays, X amount of experience to get up here. However, all 5 of us right now could sit down at a table and play Ticket to Ride, and we all have an equal chance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like I know, Amanda, you keep bringing up poker. Again, that's why I think so many people like it, because I could literally, I know poker. I played a whole life at my family, at picnics and gatherings and stuff. But the truth of the matter is, I could sit at a table with, Phil Hellmuth and whatever the top 8 poker players in the world. I could be number 9, and I could legitimately have a chance to win that tournament, right? So but chess, that would never happen. Go, that would never happen. Backgammon, that would never happen, right?
No.
Yeah. And I think that's why dice also will stand the test of time, right? Because dice is such a luck game,
Yahtzee.
Yeah, and you can play so many games with dice. It's just like a deck of poker cards. You can play so many different games with poker, a deck of poker cards, and you can play so many games with just a pair of dice. And it's so, it is a good balance of luck versus skill, because you never know what you're going to be dealt, right? And you never know how the dice is going to roll. So I think those, when you have that balance, that really helps that keep it in rotation, keep it being played.
Yeah, but that's why I appreciate games that allow you to mitigate the dice roll, because dice don't usually go in my favor. They really don't. And so I like games where you can, like dice drafting games, or, you have a choice, or you can pay a certain amount of resources to change the dice face to this other dice face, But that's why I've never been a big fan of Monopoly, because just the dice isn't favorable to me.
Yeah, no, and the same thing. That's why I sort of fell out of favor a little bit with Catan too, because I'm with you, Dwayne. Games like Castles of Burgundy, Rajas of the Ganges, where you can manipulate dice and use dice. I love those type of games. But with the same thing with Catan, you can't mitigate. You can't have control over the roll. So that's why I sort of fell out of favor, because it's sort of like Monopoly. It's like you roll and you just have to do whatever the dice say, kind of,
I think, kind of to all of our points about like a lot of these like pure 100% strategy games, when the first time I played Settlers of Catan with my brother, who had played it 10, 15 times maybe before us, the difference of the game, who won or lost, was who made the smarter placements of the opening two.
Exactly.
Your opening. And that part of it is 100% skill, to be able to read the map and say, well, this particular setup is favorable here, whatever. And I'm just like, this looks good, right? Like, let's get the game started.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, I don't know, after that point, then there's no control of the dice or whatever. And being a new player, you miss the one part of pure control that you had, because you just didn't know. You couldn't quite read the board right and say, if I place here, this will go for a good city strategy, or whatever it may be. So, there's, I think, a trend that you'll see in more and more games being made is that there's just going to be fewer pure strategy games. if chess came out today, people would say, well, where's the variable setup and the variable player powers and the Kickstarter exclusives?
Oh my God.
Exactly.
You're so right. I never even thought of that. Like, that's insane thinking now. I'm like, absolutely, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, but then, people are still learning chess, right? People are still learning Mahjong. People are still learning. I don't know that many people that are learning Go, but there are people still learning the pure strategy games, and after, after playing so many luck games, you kind of want to have some control, you know what I mean? And so then you'll move towards more strategy games and stuff. So, I think everybody as a gamer has their progression on how they go through the different mechanisms and genres and stuff like that. And it really is who you play with. Like, I don't play with like a lot of like heavy gamers, it's I'm constantly teaching new gamers, right? So it's I probably am the heaviest, but I still don't win all the time, you know what I mean? And so it's funny, and I love it. I love that we have such a wide variety of games, from purely strategic to purely luck, or from something very easy to get into to something that you need Rodney to teach you how to play, or else you'll never play, that type of thing. So it's wonderful.
It is. It's so good. It's sort of like, I'm so glad there's been, I don't know what they call it, a modern resurgence or whatever of board gaming, but and I personally think, Settlers of Catan would be my thing, how it got a lot of people, but I really, Cards Against Humanity, I mean, as much as I don't personally like the game and don't think of it's much of a game, I do respect or appreciate the fact of how many people it brought into gaming. Because again, kind of like what we're all talking about, you play Cards Against Humanity, even if you love it, okay, after the 100th, 200th time, I want to play something else. And that led them into other games. So yeah, it's really a good time playing games.
So I have a question. When you're introducing someone to a board game, what is usually your top go-to game that you enjoy? Your go-to game, like you're having a family get together and they don't know anything about games. What do you show them?
I love this question. That's a great question.
It is, but Dwayne, coming from a chef, you have to know who you're serving the food to.
Yes, exactly.
Right, so that's not sort of an easy question to answer, because if you're cooking for 6 and 8-year-olds, you're gonna serve them macaroni and cheese and they're gonna be happy, right? But if you're serving to people with a palate, they may want something different. So who are we? Is it just your family, like you said?
Just my family.
Okay, so you're to your family. Okay.
Are you asking for recommendations for your personal family, or just
wink wink?
I can answer that one. So like I said, I saw some family a couple of weeks ago and I introduced them to Splendor. And the best part of it was like this very same grandson of my uncle, he was playing Fortnite a lot, and he ended up getting in trouble, and his mom told him, nope, you can't play the Xbox. So I said, hey, why don't you come over here and learn this game? And we played a couple of them, and he like really wants the game now. And he didn't even think about Fortnite for the rest of the trip, even though he could have gotten on it, but he was more interested in, hey, I want to play this board game. And so that's really my go-to game for people is Splendor, So I was just curious of like, what do you guys go-to game? Like, what game do you pull out, like, other than a Ticket to Ride?
Tim, with your part in mind, right? Generally speaking, if people are completely unknowledgeable on what are a lot of the modern hot games that people talk about and everything, I'll pull out Forbidden Island. because generally people really like cooperative. Generally people like cooperative games. If I know that that's not something they're going to like, then I'll go to Dominion or something like that, right? But Forbidden Island is just, it has a captivating theme. The rules explain themselves, because you say we're trying to rescue treasures off an island before it sinks into the ocean. People understand intrinsically. A tile flips over, it's sinking. That's bad. The rules don't get in the way of it. The theme is a very instructive for people who are playing it for the first time, and it's exhilarating. They're excited to get the treasures and get out of there. So that's kind of my general go-to, with the caveats that some people in the world, Tim, don't like cooperative games.
You're calling me out, Chris.
I'll back you up, Tim, a little bit, because I'm not a huge fan of cooperative ones either. I do play them. I've played them before, but I always find myself be like, oh, I don't want to do what you do.
You don't want to copy someone.
Yeah, it's like, I want to collect my own thing. Thank you.
I think it works because, at least in terms of instruction, people, I always hear people say this who are not knowledgeable in games. They say, oh, board games can do that? That's a perfect sentence to hear when you're introducing someone to a new game.
That's
For me, worker placement is such an easy, genre to teach people. Like, I'll pull out either Lords of Waterdeep or Asking for Troubles, because Asking for Troubles is a little more forgiving, because there's no because you can bump people out of spots. No one's blocking your spot. But worker placement, you go to a place, you just do that thing. You get those resources, and then you go to you have cards that you just need to turn in those resources. It's just an easy thing to teach people, right? And then once they get into it, they're like, oh, I gotta think about where they're gonna go next, because if I go there before them, then I get bumped and then I get more stuff, or I have to go there before them before they block me out, And it's just so perfect to say, here's a beautiful board game, or here's one that looks kind of ugly, but it's easy to learn. It's kind of fun. And then after that, you can be like, oh yeah, okay, now we're going to get into theme, because I unfortunately don't really teach theme, but it's so easy to get people to wrap their head around, oh, I just need to go somewhere and get some stuff. It's just like shopping. I'm going to go to this store, I'm going to get this stuff. I'm going to go to this store, I'm going to get this stuff. And then I'm going to use a recipe and make a dish, right? That's why I think worker placement is such a good, genre or a mechanism to teach new people with. And Asking for Troubles is fun. It's like eye-catching. It's orange and blue, it just catches your eye, and then you're like, oh, we're taking, troubles, little monsters, and we're throwing them into the sun for money, So it's a lot of fun, and they have like little bits, they have like coal and carrots and traps and stuff. So I think it really has to be eye-catching. It has to be a theme that they either like or that they're not adverse to. There's some themes that people are just like, no thank you, right?
Yeah, I know. No, yeah. I get it.
So that's my go-to.
My wife loves cooperative games, but I know there's some cooperative games she's not going to play because she's not going to get into the theme.
It matters. It all matters.
Yeah, she's really big on theme.
Nice.
All right, well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a good topic we can talk about next time. Definitely cooperative games, because just so you know, Chris, because he called me out.
Payback's coming.
Yes, so he's absolutely right. Fully cooperative games with 100% open information, I do not like. However, hidden information cooperative games like Hanabi, or even like Dead of Winter, where you have a potential traitor, with not perfect information cooperative games, I absolutely love, like The Mind and The Game
and The Crew.
I love not perfect information cooperative games. So I just wanted to clarify. Yes, but we can talk about that next time. So listen, guys, before we go real quick, I just want to make sure we go around, and everybody, if you would, please fully let everybody know where they can find you, your channel, your name, your Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. so that way they can go and find you, what you're working on, and hopefully you can be back next week. And again, don't leave everybody, because once I close the thing, I just want we can talk a little bit afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll start with you, Chris. So go ahead and tell everybody where they can see you and find you.
All right, so most easy to find on Twitter at Meeple Overboard. I changed my little username. I don't know if it'll pop up in the video, but so Meeple Overboard, like falling off a boat. That's the name of our podcast. That's the name of our YouTube channel. And so Twitter or Instagram are easy places to find me.
All right, Estefania.
So my name is Estefania Rodriguez, and I'm a board game designer. And if you want to find me on Twitter, you can at Estefania R88. I talk about all kinds of things, but right now I'm working on a Popcats Fighter, which is my first card game. And yeah, please find me online so we can chat.
Sounds great. All right, Amanda.
So I changed my name after I saw Chris do it. That's my Instagram handle. This Panda Loves Games, and you can find me every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific on Book of Nerds on Twitch. And me, Ruel, and John, maybe some other people will play a game online for a couple hours, and it's always fun. We talk about food. We enjoy each other's company. We get, we do a lot of other stuff, and it's always a great time. And you can always find me in chat at Ruel Gaviola on Twitch, and I'm always moderating. I'm in his chat all the time. So if you want to chat with me, you can do that as well.
Sounds great. All right, Dwayne.
All right, I'm Dwayne. My YouTube channel is Blackboard Gaming. Follow me. You can find me on Instagram at BLCK_board gaming. Facebook, BLCK board gaming. And Twitter, I'm under the name at Bishop Broly.
All right, very good. And for me, you can go to meepleville.com online. It's Meepleville_cafe, I think, at Twitter. I'm not quite sure. Meepleville.
We'll have to fact check.
Yeah, cafe. I don't do it. Yeah, I'm not very good at that stuff. But the YouTube channel is where I've been really spending a lot of time, doing a lot of effort. Go to Meepleville YouTube channel and see a lot of stuff there. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I think it was a great show. We had a great time. A lot of great conversation. This was fantastic. So don't go anywhere. And anyway, we'll say goodbye to everybody, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week.
It is at Meepleville Cafe, no underscore, Tim.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, nice.
Real quick before we go, Grant, did you want to say anything about where anybody can see us, find us, or anything for the Meepleville? No? Okay, he's good. He's busy there.
Yeah.
Well, goodbye,
Next
everybody. I'll go ahead and shut off the recording if I could find that, which I can't. Ah, there we go.